Dobroveče, dobrodošli u Budvu, dobrodošli na repoziciju ove godine prvu, a nadamo se da ćemo se vidjeti 2028. kada će Budva i Boka biti Evropska prestonica kulture. Danas počinjemo razgovore o tome šta bi Boka i Budva mogli da budu, razmišljamo o najboljem scenariju tog promišljanja i moje zadovoljstvo u ovom trenutku da predstavim autora ovog projekta, Marka Pavlovića, koji će sa drugim gostima da vam ovo veče učini bar intelektualno izazovnim, što je možda i prvi korak za dalje razmišljanje o onome šta bi bili identiteti Budve i Boke.
Vuče, hvala. Prvo da kažem, Vuk je producent cijelog ovog projekta i radio je sa mnom na njemu posljednjih nekoliko mjeseci. Meni je zadovoljstvo da predstavim veoma drage goste. Ja moram slobodno da kažem da budem emotivan jednog i jedinog Giles Petersona, koji je zadužio cijelo čovečanstvo svim onim što je uradio u muzici i uticao ne samo na ljude koji vole muziku, nego na kulturne politike gradova, na producente širom svijeta, festivale i muzičara, ajde da kažem na kraju. Pored Gilesa tu će biti i Harvinder iz londonske producentske kuće International Sounds, koji ima svoju radio emisiju koji će svoje iskustvo, da kažem, vođenja emisije i svega toga primijeniti ovdje, tako da će on voditi program. Sa nama je Sonja koja će prevoditi sa engleskog na crnogorski jezik i ako bude trebalo nekom prevod za pitanje ili ne, ona je tu. I očekujemo svakog trenutka, ali za glavnjenu gužvi, da dođe Dušan Kaličanin koji ovog trenutka predstavlja, odnosno večeras će predstaviti Tehnokratiju, jedan muzički pokret koji je bio aktivan 90. godina u Beogradu, a ujedno i koordinator naše kandidature za Evropsku prestonicu kulture. Sada bih dao riječ Harvu da počne razgovor sa Gilesom i slobodno pitajte, prekinite, tu smo, dakle ovo je jedna interaktivna radionica, nije formalna, uzmite pivo pored u Old Town pubu, opustite se i pričamo o muzici i kulturi. Hvala.
Yeah, just a brief welcome to everybody. This is a big step and potential opening for culture in both Budva and Boka. And we're very happy to have the Giles Peterson with us today. And a big thank you and shout out to everything that he's done to the music industry and to festival organization as well, to the public and to all practicing artists in the industry. We have with us also Harvinder from London. And yeah, we have a late panelist with us as well, Dušan Kaličanin. And šta je još bilo? Yeah, feel free to grab a beer from the pub, and this is a very relaxed conversation that we'll just dive right into. And I'm here to translate for anybody and all means and purposes. Okay, yeah.
Nice.
You can take the...
Oh, yeah.
Can I use this one?
Keep
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hi. What a lovely bunch of people. Welcome. Lovely, beautiful faces. My name's Harvinder Signh. I'm based in London. I run a little record label called International Sounds, do a little radio show, work in one of the best record shops in London, or the second best record shop. I've been here now probably 8 times, so I'm known by a few people. I'm like a local. People invite me for dinner to their house. They do. Give me lots of loza to drink every day. So I'm not feeling that great today. And the people laughing are the ones who give me the loza. So this is really about our lives in music, how it has an impact every day on our lives, culturally, politically, financially. Feel free to ask any questions you like, either Giles or myself. We've together been in the industry probably about 50, 60 years together in total. So, but Giles has done a bigger kind of patch than I have. So he has more experience of different cultures, different countries, how people respond to music. I actually grew up in a place called Tanga in Tanzania, which is a coastal town in East Africa. So I have a little bit of an African influence in my musical upbringing. My mother and father used to take me to the Majestic Cinema every Saturday to watch Bollywood films. So I don't know if you know about Bollywood films, 3 hours, 100 songs. Everything that can ever happen to you in life happens to you in those 3 hours. It was like escapism for like 1 billion people in India. For 3 hours they could go and watch a film and there would be something completely different from, just about managing to put food on the table. So a lot of the music in Bollywood films had Brazilian influence, African influence, Arabic influence. So that's where my kind of upbringing was in music. That's where my influences are from. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I shall hand you over to Mr. Giles Petersonom.
Wow, really? You translating?
Yeah, I'll just do a quick translation. So, Harvinder, sorry, in Serbian, right. Harvinder je sa nama već 8 godina dolazi u Budvu i možda ste ga videli pre ovoga, sretali ga kroz grad, već je postao nekako i lokalac i dolazi ovde svako leto da pušta muziku. Jako je otvoren za sva pitanja od publike i šta god imate da postavite oko kulture, oko muzike, šta već. Znaju se od ranijih godina već Giles i Harvinder i ništa, pričamo malo isto o tome koliko je kultura bitna u našim životima. Odrastao je u Tanzaniju gde je često išao ili vodili su ga roditelji na Bollywood filmove gde je takođe doživeo dosta kulturoloških trenutaka što se tiče uticaja cinematografije na naše priče kao ljudi, koliko se dramatično dešavanja dešava u 3 sata u jednom filmu i šta to u suštini nama kreativno podstiče i kulturološki znači i tako malo sećanja iz detinjstva. I sad da malo bacimo pažnju na Giles i na njegovu karijeru.
That was amazing. Hello, I'm Giles, or Gilles, if you want, as my mother called me. By the way, Harvinder, the thing is, when I was listening to you just now, I listened to his radio shows in the UK, and you've got such great personality when it comes to putting radio and your character into it, and it just made me think that I think one thing that a lot of the DJs and the culture that I've grown up on and has been probably the most important influence for me and a very British thing is the relationship between the radio and the industry and the DJ culture. And so when I kind of try and explain to people about how I kind of navigated my career, it always was in parallel to being on the radio, whether it was pirate radio, whether it was the BBC, or whether it was syndicated radio around the world. So I think that's probably the first thing I'd like to say as to probably why I'm here today. Well, why we're here today is sometimes radio gets forgotten, or people kind of around the world, they ask about dance music and the culture that we come from, and they don't understand, or they don't have the same relationship with radio, because radio is a really great loudspeaker to get the music across, to develop the sounds that you can then play at the events, which are a little bit more sophisticated because people can already get into it. So that's, I think, where we're both very connected.
Samo da se nadovežemo malo na to koliko je isto radio bitan za podsticaj u kulturi i koliko nam znači u širenju uopšte informacije oko muzike i naših kreacija, tako da priča se malo o tome u Londonu, koliko oboje su imali dosta dodira sa radio emisijama i da li je to piratski radio, da li je to BBC, da li je to internacionalno, šta već, da je to jako bitno isto za muzičari. Koliko je to bilo značajnije ranije, a koliko se zaboravlja danas?
Just to add, probably one of the things that you look forward to the most, no matter what else is going on in your life, whether you've got money problems, family problems, whatever, is your radio show once a week or twice a week or whatever, you can just shut yourself off for 2 hours, 3 hours and just play the music to the world. And it's probably one of the best feelings you can get in music for me.
Samo da dodam isto da šta god da ti se dešava u životu, možeš da se isključiš i da uključiš radio i da se jednostavno izgubiš u muzici.
Okay, I have a question for Giles. Last year I was in set in your festival there, and my impression about your festival was that all city is during the festival everything is changed. All city lives for the festival. You can feel the pulse, and for us here is really interesting. Can you tell us something about how your festivals and your project have an influence of, for example, city cultural politics or public musical discourse of some city?
Okay, so I do 3 festivals nowadays. I do a festival. The first one I did was in Set, called the Worldwide Festival, and we just celebrated our 18th event 2 weeks ago. The other festival I do, which is celebrating its 5th anniversary, is a festival in Catania in Sicily, which is a kind of mixture of food curation and music curation, Discovery Festival. And the other festival I do is very different. It's a festival in the UK called We Out Here, and we're celebrating our 4th edition this year, and that's like 15,000 people, 18 stages, crazy camping, like the festivals like Glastonbury and those sort of festivals. And for me, in a way, doing festivals was just a natural continuation of the art of curation, right? So for me, ever since I was doing parties and events back in the 80s, I always tried to incorporate DJ culture and live music culture. So I'd always try and find a way to make the connection between the bands and the DJs, and to find a place for the community to kind of come to. And that's basically continued throughout all my time. Now, to answer the question about Set, what was interesting with Set was because it's a sort of unknown town in France. I was, being French, half French, I always wanted to kind of make the French scene more interesting. I always found that the UK was the leader, and then you'd go to different parts. I also spent many years from the mid-80s taking the sound that was coming out of London around the world. So I had residencies in Vienna, Paris, Wuppertal in Germany, so I would be DJing a lot. And in a way, I always wanted to kind of make this exchange, cultural exchange, between the DJ culture and the local cultures. And France was somewhere I always wanted to do something, but it was difficult because apart from Paris, maybe Marseille, maybe somewhere like Lyon, it was difficult to kind of really capture the essence of club culture. And then when I went and DJ'd in Montpellier, which is quite near to Set. Sorry for your translation. I went to Montpellier to be DJ, and I noticed in Montpellier there was a really interesting youth culture that was understanding the nuance and the finesse of club culture. The fashion, the dancing, the etiquette of the culture. So I said to the promoters, why don't you bring your people, and I bring people from London, and we can do a beautiful exchange, and where shall I do it? And they said, well, actually there's a really fantastic place nearby called Set, which is like a presqu'île. It's half island, but it's connected to the mainland. And basically we did a first party and maybe 300 people came. And that was the beginning of a relationship with a town which benefited from me indirectly bringing people from all around Europe to discover this city. It also benefited from developing the local scene so that they could get all these DJs and people coming and joining. And so in a way it became a perfect combination of people coming together. And for me, it was very, very important to do a festival in which it wasn't just turning up in a beautiful place and bringing all my people, making a mess and then leaving. For me, it's about exchange. So for me, it was really about how can we kind of get all these people to come together, have a discovery, and gain friendships out of it. And it was difficult because France is also very, like any country, they're protective. And they are very, there's local rules and there's politics. And it's a fishing town. So the fishermen were like, who are these people? And the mayor was, what's going on? The people were kind of questioning what this was. So it took a few years for me to, have meetings and for us to get to know each other. So luckily, after 18 years, it continues to be, a wonderful moment for us. And a good example of how you can have this exchange.
Ok, sažeto. Znači, pitanje je bilo šta znači zapravo praviti festival u gradu, koliko mi zapravo nudimo gradu i koliko to može da razvija grad. Često se uzbudimo svi oko to naziv festivala, ali kako mi kao kreatori zapravo možemo da napravimo to na način gde baš podstičemo kulturu. Odgovor na pitanje je bilo da Giles je autor 3 različitih festivala koji i dalje postoje i glavne lekcije koje su se naučile u toku tih festivala i koji i dalje traju do dan danas jeste da je mnogo bitno davati tom mestu na kojem je sam festival gde se održava kao što ti uzimaš od tog mesta. Znači, bio je primer u Francuskoj odakle je Giles, on sarađuje sa gradom Set da bi pravio jedan festival gde je njemu isto jako bitno bilo da ispoštuje opštinu, da ispoštuje ljude koji tu žive i da se obogati ta životna sredina, a ne samo da se stvori događaj koji će onda da jednostavno napusti to mesto i da nema nikakav uticaj dugotrajni ni kratko, mislim da samo služi u kratkoj nekoj svrsi. I da, pored tih primjera bili su primjeri isto da postoji festivali koji služe kao neka vrsta fuzije, dakle hrana i muzika ili muzika i performansi i tako dalje, raznovrsne kulturne događaje koji nisu samo čisto to neko uživanje, nego isto kreacija. Eto.
Okay, I'm late. I finally came from Podgorica. I would like to ask you one question that connects building the scene and building the media scene. I think this question could be for both of you. Maybe the biggest question and maybe the biggest obstacle in building any kind of scene is how to connect grassroots and from top to bottom. How to make a media scene and how to make underground scene. The question is how you build it in UK. How can you do this via BBC Radio 1? This is like a mainstream or let's say worldwide radio, but also connected with pure underground. And also for you, because your knowledge and experience is also in that area is huge.
Pitanje je, dakle, kako možemo da razvijamo muzičku scenu u alternativnom, ali isto u medijskom smislu i u mainstreamu nekom i kako možemo da spajamo te dve. Jel sam dobro prevodila?
Okay, so actually the thing is, I've been doing this for 45 years.
Exactly.
So that's how you do it, because you can't just build it like that with a radio station. It's a lifetime of growth for a movement or for sub-movements to come out of what was built before Acid House. So, people look at 1988 as the year that it all changed. It wasn't. It was happening
many years before, yeah.
Leading up to that. I was lucky that I was part of the scene before it became global in a way. But I think that the key for you in terms of to answer the question about developing it, growing it, but keeping your eye on the underground, for me it's always been about making sure that half of your job is to feed your legacy and feed the history, but the other role is to act as a mentor and as somebody who can encourage the next generation. So for me, that's always been my way forwards, by having a record label, organizing events, and making sure that you don't close the door to the next generation. You have to allow and give them as much information, bring them in as much as they want to into your movement, and that's how it grows, and that's how the media keeps interested in it, and that's how it's healthy, I think.
Bavim se ovime 45 godina i u suštini bavio sam se ovime mnogo pre nego što su dosta ovih muzičkih tokova postali veliki i pre nego što je sve bilo toliko globalizovano. Dakle, kako bismo postigli dalje tu kreativnu snagu i ostavili taj neki balans između alternative i mainstream, bitno je da se stalno hrani to interesovanje i da se gaji, ali takođe da i dalje podstičemo mlade i nove i inovativne neka polja.
Thank you. And what is your opinion on that topic?
Basically everything Giles said, but Giles has been doing a show for 40-something years. My radio show has been going for about 15 years. I mean, for me, the most important thing is to believe in the music that you're playing, because if you don't, then the audience pick up on it, and also try and preempt what's coming ahead in front of you. Be quick to, obviously you have to enjoy it when you play that music. So keep on top of things and believe in the tracks that you're playing, because your listeners pick up on what you're playing, what you're saying, and if they think you're just playing something for the sake of it, it's not going to work. You're going to lose listeners very, very quickly.
Imam isti odgovor kao Giles, ali bavim se ovime 15 godina. Međutim, naučio sam nekako da je najbitnije da ti zaista veruješ u muziku koju puštaš i da ti uživaš u njoj, zato što publika će uvek da čuje ukoliko to nije istina, ukoliko ti puštaš nešto radi puštanja. Tako da jako je bitno da se i ti zaneseš u to.
And what is your opinion about community development? You told us about necessity of mentoring and necessity of curating. These are the two sides of the process, but also you have to spend some time in record shops to meet people, to curate the scene. While you're traveling all around the world, you do not have that much time, but maybe you have collaborates who are working on this. How you build a scene, for example, community?
Pitanje je kako podstičeš razvoj zadruge, znači kako nastavljaš da podstičeš razvoj svog nekog community-a i kako to naročito postižeš kada često putuješ, da li stižeš da se vratiš svojoj nekoj zajednici?
So I think one of the things that I did a few years ago that was quite important, I also run a record label which is called Brownswood, and we do things like, in the last 5-6 years we've done some compilation records. So we've gone to Australia, we've been to South Africa, and we've actually kind of created new music that represents the scene to promote it on our global platform. So that's a way of sort of doing it, showing what's going on that's connected to what we're doing. And those ideas kind of came off an album that I did a few years ago called We Out Here, which was an album that was celebrating the new, what they call London jazz scene, which was basically artists like Shabaka Hutchins, Nubia Garcia, Ezra Collective. And at the time, these were unknown, very fringe artists. So in the sense that this idea of doing compilations and making the movement viable through these collections, curated records, that gives obviously the media the story. So that was an important thing, and it continues to be what I do. But the other thing, which I think was quite significant for the scene, if you want to call it that, was I set up a radio station called Worldwide FM. And Worldwide FM became a kind of a platform which would allow a new generation of DJs and tastemakers and selectors and storytellers to be able to join in a radio type community. And that ran for 6 years, and in the end it was very successful. But talking of time, for me it became too much for me to, it was almost too big for me to do it as I had been doing it. So it's been on a pause for the last year, and I'm looking to relaunch it in a few months' time.
Pored svih ostalih posla, ja također držim svoj record label koji uspeva upravo da podstiče tu vrstu nekog community buildinga kroz upravo te neke publikacije raznovrsnih ploča koji u suštini povezuju različite kulture, sarađujemo sa Australijom, sa Južnom Afrikom i tako recimo izdali smo jednu ploču koja se zove We Out Here, koja je eto upravo imala različite artiste na sebi, muzičare koji su svi iz raznovrsnih pozadine, iz različitih zemalja, ali imaju zajedničku tačku što su bazirani u Londonu. I recimo šta je bilo sljedeće? Da, bilo je zaboravila sam šta je posle toga bio primjer.
Ispričao je da jednostavno nema više snage da radi tu emisiju, nego je napravio malu pauzu od nekih recimo pola godine, jer mu je odlačila mnogo energije, ali će probati da ponovo pusti to u etar, verovatno malo i zbog korone i tako to. Okej.
Samo bi bilo važno da možda Giles spoji temu identiteta i ovoga čime se on bavi. Dakle, da li je moguće uticati na različite vrste identiteta ako nemate podršku konteksta, odnosno koliko je teško djelovati van konteksta?
Okay, so this question for you, Giles, is about identity, and basically, how can you reconcile identity with context, and how do you take in music, how can you show identity without context?
Can you do what you do without context?
It's a philosophical question.
That's abstract. I think my philosophy has always been to keep moving forwards and just to do the right thing, and the context will find itself within an authentic movement. And I think that the moment you start questioning those things is when there might be something not quite solid. So in a way, I think you have to ask the questions about what is this for, who's it for, where's it going, is this doing, is you know, we have to ask those questions. But for me, I feel that I've always felt, I feel that the work and the natural energy allows it to answer itself.
Kroz moje iskustvo nalazi se identitet jako inertno ili jednostavno kroz sam rad i bitno je da ti samo nastavljaš, da možda čak i ne razmišljaš toliko o tome, nego će samo da se stvori u toku izvedbe.
And now we could continue our story about media and importance of media in building the scene and connecting with the audience. The question is for you, please. What is happening now with the new generation of radio? How internet and podcasts and digital platforms changed radio? Do you have in this moment still the strength that you had 15 years ago, or are you using some new tricks?
Pitanje za Harvindera je kako možemo dalje da razvijamo medije, kako možemo da podstičemo i dalje medije, jer sad kad se tehnologija tako razvila da imamo podcast i više nisu radio programi možda toliko relevantni.
There's new radio stations popping up every day, and sadly also closing down. Not every day, but quite regularly. if you want to do a podcast, if you want to do a radio show, you can do it easily from home. You just need a decent internet connection and a decent mic, or you don't even need a decent mic. A lot of radio shows now are just mixes, just one track playing after the other. There are lots of young radio stations popping up all over the place, and they're full of energy, and it's good to listen to them, to get some maybe ideas from them, because of the fact that they are full of energy. And if you've been doing radio for a long time, you don't want to miss out on something, and then suddenly find it's passed you by. So yeah, lots of new radio stations, very easy to set up, and you can do it from your bedroom. Like I think one or two pirates maybe happened from way back in the day.
Da, svaki dan se kreiraju nove radio emisije i jako je jednostavno zapravo započeti radio emisiju. Međutim, danas već su krenuli da liče radio emisije na miksevi gde jedna pesma prati drugu, tako da možda se gubi malo taj interaktivan element u tome, ali mislim jako ih ima puno i nekako neće prestati da bude relevantno i dalje i lako je naći, pristupačno je svuda. Eto.
Just one other thing was when COVID hit everyone, a lot of people found ways of setting up their own little studios even more from home. Like for example, I couldn't go to a studio to do a radio show anymore because you didn't want to share the mic with 10, 20, 30, 40 other people who might have COVID or whatever. So you ended up setting up your own little setup at home. And I've never actually gone back into the studio. My radio show is all from home, and it seems to work just as fine.
U toku pandemije se također razvila praksa da se radio emisije otvaraju iz kuće ili od kuće i od tada je jednostavno praksa ostala na daljini zapravo. Posle toga, eto recimo, Harvinder nije se sam vratio u svoj studio, nego je ostao kod kući da snima sve emisije.
And during COVID, radio was probably one of the biggest savers for many people around the world. You used to get the most amazing, and probably Giles the same or even more, you used to get the most amazing messages from people, very emotional about how being on radio, playing music, and then being able to listen to it still literally got them through the hard times of 2 years, 3 years of COVID. So very important technically to be able to set up your own little setup, and yeah, over to you.
Mislim da je takođe radio spasio dosta od nas u toku pandemije i da je služilo zaista, da smo svi jako puno slušali radio emisije i da zbog toga je fenomenalno što je isto toliko jednostavno postaviti radio emisiju, ali takođe dosta ljudima pomaže.
Okay. I have two questions for Giles. First will be, what do you think about Budva? How Budva looks like to you? How Montenegro looks like to you? And somehow, what do you think about a process of, we are candidate for European Capital of Culture, and what do you think about it? Dušan told me that Montpellier is the same, and you mentioned Montpellier half an hour ago. And what do you think, how our music and things you do, and Harv, and all of us, can change and the city, and how it can help in all of this process?
Evo jedno pitanje o Budvi kao grad. Šta misliš o Budvi kao grad i kako ti se čini kultura ovde ili jednostavno sam grad? Mi smo trenutno se kandidujemo da postanemo predstavnica za kulturu u Evropi i baš nas zanima šta misliš kako bi mogla muzička scena da se razvije ovde i da u suštini da se nekako poveže za to kandidatstvo.
Well, already you've been doing a lot of work here with the bar and the Southern Soul Festival that you organised, and that was really very important because you were beginning to introduce again this exchange between the infrastructure for music and festivals with a global audience that was coming to your festival. So bring it back hopefully, you know. I know that there's a lot going on in different parts of the region. Of course, a lot goes on in Croatia with all these festivals, and Albania and various things. So obviously it's a beautiful part of the world. You know, I think if there's an active scene and there's a way of being able to develop music from here as well and artists from here as well, then why not? It makes sense. It's you know, it's just a boat ride away from Bari. But no, it's a great spot, and I wish you the best of luck. I hope it happens. But you know, I think the main thing is just to kind of make sure that you keep pushing, which you have done, a very solid, optimistic approach to curation and exchange.
Da, ja mislim da ima puno potencijala, da znam sam da su bili festivali ranije i postoji uvek mogućnost da se razvija i dalje muzička kultura u jednom gradu i da to treba da se podstiče i treba da se razvija dalje. Ja se nadam da će nastaviti da se razvija, niste toliko daleko od Barija, od Italije takođe, tako da imate dosta potencijala i treba da se nastavi.
We hope that this will happen and that Southern Soul will appear again, maybe through candidacy, maybe without the candidacy. And the funny thing is that in 2028, for which we are competing, from the cities outside of European Union, France will be having its own European Capital of Culture. In this moment, we are collaborating with 4 finalists. It's Montpellier, Bourges, Rouen and Clermont-Ferrand. So we will see who will win. I think in November we will hear that news, and for us we will hear that in September. So anyway, if we win or if we are not winning, something will happen, like exchange. And what is your opinion about the audience? You've been here, you played here, you play in the Balkans also. You came from Barutana, Belgrade, last weekend, yeah? And is there any differences between, for example, audience that you saw and you felt in Southern Soul, the audience in here, audience in Balkans? What is the feeling?
Kako god da budu rezultati, čak i da ne pobedimo, nadamo se da će iz cele procedure da izađe neka vrsta saradnje sa drugim gradovima i sa ta razmena kulture. Međutim, sledeće pitanje je, sad si bio u Beogradu i puštao si u Barutani, kakvo ti je iskustvo bilo tamo, kakav ti je doživljaj bio?
So, it's funny, I have a lovely relationship with Belgrade because I used to be, again, back to the radio, it was one of the first places that would take my show, syndicated show on B92. And so for the last 12, 15, maybe 20 years actually, I was on the radio. And just as a matter of interest, I mean, the radio for me, another thing that was very important in developing a particular approach to the culture was to be on the radio. So for me, I was on in Japan, J-Wave, KCRW in Los Angeles, Radio Nova in Paris. I was on in Finland and Estonia. And so it was Ukraine. It was a very important part for me to be able to kind of make those connections with all those different countries. And then eventually you end up going to these places as a DJ. And so going back to Belgrade this weekend was wonderful. I wasn't sure because it's been 5 years and, you know, the world has changed a lot on many levels, you know, listening and, you know, taste. And so I was really amazed that it was a sellout and that everybody came out and that it was actually not just old people. So it was a really interesting cross-generational crowd.
All people like us.
Yeah, you know, the
50 plus, yeah.
Yeah, or 40 plus. So it was great that there was a really nice, you know, cross-section. The other thing that was interesting for me is I played in a festival in Romania as well, which was wonderful, amazing, you know. And I'd never played I think I played in Bucharest many years ago, but that was a very enlightening event for me to play. It was like maybe the 4th stage, maybe 1,000 people, but very in tune with the music, really connected, you know, not just lowest common denominator dance music, you know, which is of course what you always kind of have to fight with, because people don't necessarily understand the subtleties. But this was amazing. So, you know, I think it's very positive actually. I think people are able nowadays. I think going back to the radio thing, one problem that we have in music today is that there is so much noise. There are so many podcasts. There are so many tracks on SoundCloud. You know, how do you start? Where do you begin? You know, so the aim really is to curate the best of this stuff. You know, curators are really important now. People that people can trust, who can guide you, because there's too much noise. So in a way, that's something that is very important for the future, to be able to give sense and understanding. And again, for me, I'm very lucky because I'm on the BBC. And the BBC is a global platform with a reputation for music. So I get the chance on a Saturday to go beyond my small crowd, you know, whatever that world that we all inhabit, our little bubbles. When I'm on Six Music, I get new listeners all the time. And so I think it's very important for festivals and for all that we're talking about today is always look for a new audience. Don't ever get caught up in just your world. That's the key. And the DJs who get caught up in their world and just their demographic, there's no future. It's going to fade. So for it to grow, you have to make sure you put yourself in an uncomfortable situation sometimes. You know, DJ next to people who you'd never DJ next to, because they have a different audience, and then you can affect that audience. And that's an important thing that I think people have to, you know, understand for it to move forwards.
Imam privilegiju što radim u radio biznisu i jednostavno zbog toga imam dosta pristupa, imam dosta kontakata zato što sarađujem često sa različitim radio emisijama, pa i tako u Beogradu. I uspeo sam, mislim, preko toga da se nekako spojim i da dolazim često u Beograd i bilo mi je fenomenalno iskustvo sad posle 5 godine da se vratim tamo i da puštam opet muziku. I drago sam se iznenadio kad sam video da su se rasprodale karte i da su ne samo stariji ljudi, nego i mladi ljudi dolazili na puštanje te muzike. Takođe, nakon tog puštanja sam bio u Rumuniji gde sam se isto toliko iznenadio zato što se baš osjeća u publici kako ljudi jednostavno imaju ukus i osjećaju muziku koju im puštaš, osjećaju te nijanse neke i nakon svega toga sam nekako, nakon celog životnog iskustva sam naučio da je zaista najbitnije možda u kulturi jeste da imamo kustose koji će da kuriraju šta mi konzumiramo kao publika, šta vredi pažnje, šta vredi slušanje i šta je dobra muzika u suštini. I na kraju dana mnogo je bitno da mi kao kreatori takođe izlazimo stalno iz naših paterna i da nalazimo nove izazove, da preispitujemo nove stvari i da pokušamo da razumemo druge ukuse koji nisu naši.
Just a quick little word about Southern Soul Festival. I've played there for about 5 years. When was the last one? 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And at the anniversary, I still get hundreds of messages about when it's going to be back. 3,000 people, 4 stages across the beach, and Jelena in the crowd, who's worked at the Southern Soul Festival, will attest to this. Still one of the most intimate festivals where you could be standing in the queue to go to the toilet next to Idris Akamor, one of our legends in jazz music, or you could be sitting there having a drink and you would see Marshall Allen from Sundra Orchestra having his soup on the beach. Really, really, you know, if you're DJing, you'd see Marcos Valle dancing along to you, even come along and ask you what this record is. So really one of the most intimate, personal places where you can mix with the superstars, your heroes, and meet people from different countries, different cultures, and carry on the relationship still after such a long time. So we hope it will resurface very soon.
Imam samo kratku reč da kažem o Southern Soul festivalu, da je to jedno od najintimnijih iskustva kao DJ koji sam imao i da do dan danas stalno dobijam pitanje od ljudi i ljudi mi pišu da me pitaju kad će sledeći Southern Soul festival da se održi. Jednostavno je jedno izuzetno mesto izvanredno gde ne možeš da iskusiš toliko neke lične doživljaje sa različitim muzičarima, poznatim DJ-evima, gde je tako opušteno i otvorena atmosfera jedna.
Pitanje publika, mikrofon.
It's working? Yeah. Yes, I would like to ask you maybe this feeling of mainstream thinking and this feeling of losing more and more freedom a bit all around the world. How does it impact your music and how does it impact the feeling in front of the audience?
Pitanje je, dakle, kada se gubi neka vrsta intimnosti ili ličnost, privatnost u muzici, kako to u suštini utiče na publiku koja sluša vašu muziku.
Do you mean when I'm talking about working with outside of my comfort zone? I just think you need to put yourself outside of your zone to satisfy yourself in another way later on. I think if you stick to what's easy, you're never really testing yourself. So for me, I balance a little bit of the easy stuff, what I call home matches, where you know the crowd and they're going to love you and you can do what you want, and situations where you need to look at the audience differently and listen to music differently. And what happens as well with that is that you end up building relationships with the mainstream. And that could be Diplo, or that could be Peggy Gou, or that could be, even David Guetta, or someone like that. For me to play with these people and to have radio shows with them is as interesting as doing shows with Marshall Allen or Herbie Hancock, or so for me that's a part of how to keep yourself in tune as an artist.
Ako misliš na to kako izaći iz svoje comfort zone, a da bude nekako kreativni podsticaj, upravo se radi o tome da ti kao kreator nalaziš novu perspektivu kroz druge ukuse, kroz druge pokrete neke koji tebi nisu inače prirodni i da to može isto tako da znači u mainstreamu da nalaziš jednu vrstu inspiracije zato što radiš sa različitim ljudima i slušaš muziku na drugačiji način nego što bi inače.
Okay, one more question also could guide us what to do in Montenegro, how to develop the scene or how to curate the scene. You mentioned importance of continuing with the festival, continuing with the club culture, continuing with Casper legacy, and also to bring maybe something in the radio area, because we do not have here that kind of radio show that could bring the audience. Also connect with cultural projects, be opened also for underground, but also for mainstream, but in a clever way, not to close ourselves. And maybe something about the visual part. Your sets are enough visual if you think and feel them. It's not necessary to have a video for them, but sometimes the video, maybe for video mixing or maybe a video clip for MTV or some new platforms could help. Could you tell us something about that? What is your opinion about mixing video and music? Is it necessary? How it helps? What is your opinion personal? Why do you use it? You not use it? So this is it.
Pitanje je, dakle, kako je vaše viđenje oko video u sklopu sa muzikom i sa audio iskustvom. Dakle, kako vi koristite ili šta je vaše mišljenje o tome upotrebe video i vizualnog uz muziku?
I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the whole social media game and, you know, the Instagram and the visualization, the boiler room, all of these things, it's kind of like, in a way, you have to be the narrative is always changing. And from my point of view, if you're talking about, it's important to have a social media presence. I think if you're a new up-and-coming person, I think it's your currency. You know, you can't just go, I'm not going to do that, you know, because it's not cool or whatever. I think you have to just accept that it's something that you do. But then how you play it is really up to you. And personally, I stick to music now, you know, and you have to be very careful with, you know, how much of your own self you want to give away. And so that's a personal decision. But I think some people are going to regret some of it. Some people, I mean, I've regretted things I've done, you know, in the past. I've been doing it for, you know, however long it's gone, you know. I was lucky because my producer at the radio, BBC, about 10 years ago, when it was beginning to kick off, after MySpace, she said to me, you need to open up Twitter, you know, it's really important. And I was like, I can't do another one, you know, Facebook's enough or whatever. It was just, or MySpace was enough. But in the end, I was really glad that she kind of, you know, opened the door to making sure that I kind of got involved in whatever that was, because that allowed me to be able to spread my message and personality through this new way of social media. So, you know, I think it's, you just got to be careful. I mean, you know, I've had issues, you know, with, you know, which have involved police and on a bigger level, because it can get too close with some fans. Exactly. So you just have to be very careful. And I think if you're a young woman, it's obviously even more complicated, especially the young DJs coming through. So, you know, it's something that, but it's a part and parcel of it, you know. And again, with regards to things like, you know, in a way as well, there's just, there's so much noise. My philosophy is even now, this is being filmed, right? So this can be seen by hundreds of people, maybe more, you know? And so I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to that camera. And so whatever I say can be just taken out of context.
We're making this recording for the university. Yeah, for study it. Okay, I'm joking, but also it could be for the university.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but the thing is, it's not just us. So I'm also thinking in my head, maybe if there wasn't the camera there, I might be a little bit more, shall we say, you know, transparent. Perhaps, you know, you have all these other thoughts in your head, which is like going to be very complicated for someone who's just beginning on the journey. So, you know, I appreciate having had years to be able to see how it grows, but I also see how it can really unstable people's mental health and artists and you know, and it creates this kind of false connection and closeness sometimes, which can be dangerous.
Da, zanimljivo je to sa vizualnim sredstvima. Jeste, živimo u užasno nekako zagađenom svetu gde imamo jako puno informacije, jako puno alata i sredstva vizualnog i audio i raznovrsnih, tako da recimo sećam se kad je prvi put moja menadžerka meni rekla da otvorim Twitter, a već sam imao Facebook, pa sam se pitao zašto moram stalno da otvaram nešto novo, neku novu platformu da imam. Ali eto, bilo je bitno recimo da ja kao neko ko radim u biznisu jednom, da imam da vodim računa oko toga šta je najnovije i kako mi kao profesionalci trebamo da se predstavljamo publici, ali to može isto tako da bude opasno i moramo da budemo kritični o tome i da kritično razmišljamo o tome, da kritički razmišljamo o tome, da jednostavno da se, da ne budemo toliko opušteni o tome takođe. I razmišljam često o tome, recimo, kad god ima kamera ispred mene, koliko mi se menjaju razgovori i odgovori na ovakva pitanja. Dakle, odjednom razmišljam o tome ko dalje gleda, ko će ovo da koristi kasnije u kojoj svrsi. Tako da trebamo svi da razmišljamo malo više o tome, ali svakako da, moramo isto da budemo sve vreme da pratimo šta su trendovi u suštini. I have a question if I can ask. It's a two-part question, so because we've gotten into this realm of we've talked a lot about collaboration and collaborating with people internationally and also with other artists and looking into what other artists are doing in order to broaden our horizons. And simultaneously now we've talked a little bit about social media, but I'm very curious what your take on, for example, collaborations interdisciplinarily are as well. So not just with other musical artists, but do you find inspiration in collaborations that you have with other people who work in culture as well?
I mean, do you want to translate that?
Sure. I figured I would let somebody else speak first, but moje pitanje za Gilesa je bilo da li nalazi inspiraciju i koliko znači interdisciplinarna saradnja sa drugim umetnicima u drugim umetničkim disciplinama, dakle ne samo muzičarima, ali sa ljudima koji rade u kulturi van muzike.
So I think that it's funny because nowadays for me there's a lot more opportunity to work in interdisciplinary situations. I don't know how that happened, but I think already within fashion there's a real exchange going on. I think people like Virgil Abloh were very important in kind of giving music a huge platform via fashion, and he was such a champion of the alternative scene that, you know, he had power and he could put that onto this huge new audience. So he was doing amazing work. I think that what's happening as well within like dance and within the world of kind of the museums and those spaces has grown a lot, where the kind of idea of curation, music and art it's a growing space, right? And I'm certainly being asked to get more involved in that area. But, you know, at the end of the day, my skill is music, and so it's nice to be in a slightly different space because you learn a lot from it and you get different aspects. But it's certainly the future in a lot of ways. It's going back to my philosophy about making sure that you are in different spaces to find new audiences.
In deeper waters, yeah. Odgovor na pitanje je bilo da apsolutno jeste bitno i ima dosta podsticaja u različitim disciplinama koje možemo da steknemo u saradnji sa drugim ljudima. I kao primer je navedeno Virgil Abloh, dizajner koji je dosta uradio za muziku unutar modnoj industriji, i recimo koliko mi možemo u suštini da vučimo inspiracije od takvih nekih saradnja i takvih nekih interdisciplinarnih delatnosti, i da je apsolutno zanimljivo da svi mi malo pođemo van svog polja, ali da na kraju krajeva Giles jeste muzičar, to je njegova struka i tu on može najviše da doprinosi kroz svoju perspektivu.
Hello. Very interesting discussion. I'm just thinking, you know, trying to get what is coming from here, and it brings up everything from economics to globalization to what is possible in the modern times. Place like Budvar, looking to London, etc. I was just thinking, as Giles was just talking then, fashion and clubbing, politics, everything was always that in London. Everything was always mixed up. And I was thinking, it's so massive, you don't need all that. Because when I look at him, I also see an 18-year-old boy with, like, you know, we were very young when everything started. And I'm thinking a lot of this, someone's throwing things at me. A lot of this hinges around youth. And obviously none of us now are 18. And we have this conversation as well. I think London's vibrancy is that it throws off the generations before. There's respect, but you fight to throw off. The soul scene was built on this. But it's kind of, you think, like my kids now have their music, they don't really want my music. Now, I'm not sure if that is true of Budva, but I was thinking for you it's almost, where is the youth energy? And do you want to bring that in? And it also goes to fashion, and you can't manufacture it, but I'm sure it's there, and that makes it interesting, because then it becomes because the question over here about context, I think that's what he was saying. It's like, this is a big context, you can't just slap it on. So it makes it suddenly very interesting. So you've got the Southern soul, and then you've got all this localized energy. I don't know what it is, but you'll know what it is more. And you plug into that, and then you've got something that's very of the culture of here, that then the European culture go, oh, well, that's not doing it's not slapping it over. We want a bit of that. You're just using this as inspiration and doing completely your own thing. So, which is less a question, and I've given you a big problem now.
I don't know that there's... Dakle, komentar je bio kako u Budvi, u poređenju sa Londonom, gde je sve toliko već multidisciplinarno, već toliko nekako kao neka velika saradnja različitih umetničkih disciplina, već postoji tolika velika eklektika u saradnji da se to konstantno osjeća i to je nekako jako prirodan osjećaj u toj kulturi. Kako se to ovde čini u Budvi, recimo? Pričamo često o tome kako je u kontekstu i ovo pitanje celo vezano za interdisciplinarnost je vezano isto za kontekst, da u Londonu je to nekako dato, to se očekuje čak, ali da li je tako svuda u ostalim zemljama? Pričalo se isto malo o tome kako mi stalno pokušavamo kada nalazimo inovaciju da izađemo iz onog starog ili recimo da mladi ljudi koji izlaze i žele da stvaraju nove muzičke tokove uvek pokušavaju da izbegnu ono što je već bilo i da li se to isto osjeća u nekim drugim kulturama? Ja mislim da je to pitanje za vas. Ne, ja mislim da je to za vas pitanje bilo. Was that a question for the locals?
I don't know.
Just wanted to talk a little bit, as we're talking about fashion, etc. One of the most important things to happen in the last couple of years in London, in UK, and in some of the other cities is the emergence of vinyl records. And there's nothing better than, I work in a record shop, Giles is always in a record shop buying records. Nothing more satisfying than seeing a 14, 15-year-old girl or boy come in and buy or ask for a recommendation of a Stevie Wonder record, or someone like Leroy Hudson or whatever, and it gives you real pleasure in seeing this happening, and it's happening every time I work in the record shop. It's one of the most pleasurable things, and maybe it will catch on. Maybe we could have a record shop here in Budva. Why not? And you talk to them and say, well, how do you know? Oh, my dad my dad's got these Stevie Wonder records or whatever. So why don't you listen to them? No, we want our own copies of Stevie Wonder records. So in terms of fashion and things that are catching on and stuff, the re-emergence of vinyl is probably one of the biggest things in music terms that has affected our careers. It's made us dig even deeper for newer music from around the world.
Što se tiče mode i šta je u modi, kad se priča o muzici, evo recimo nedavno smo doživjeli veliku popularnost još jednom u vinilima, u pločama, znači opet se kupuju ploče i često se desi kada radim u radnji gde prodajemo ploče, ulaze nam mladi ljudi koji žele da imaju Stevie Wondera, ali oni već imaju u suštini od oca ili od majke imaju Stevie Wondera koji su nasledili, ali ne, oni žele sami da kupe svoju ploču, da imaju svoje neko iskustvo sa tim, tom vrstom kupovinom nečega što je inače nekad bilo u modi i sad se vraća opet, tako da zanimljivo je to ciklično nekako.
Basically, we just need the younger generation to carry on what we were doing before, because it's going to die out slowly otherwise. That's basically what I was trying to say.
Tako da u suštini nam treba da se ponavljaju takve stvari, zato što će inače da izumre to što smo mi stvarali u našoj generaciji.
There is one new story from this area. This area, Montenegro, ex-Yugoslavia, was some kind of one cultural area, one cultural scene 20, 30 years ago. And what was happening in Belgrade 1 month before you came to Borutana? On 15th of June, there was like a premiere of long-form documentary film about the club scene of ex-Yugoslavia. And in that movie, you have more than 250 people recorded from the 90s, you also, appearing on Cvijeta, B92, Barutana, yeah? And what is interesting thing, what is the connection with this story and your hints that you are giving to us? Director of the documentary was not born when this happened. So this is a young Pavle Terzic who just finished Faculty of Dramatic Arts, and he felt something in that story. We gave him a huge documentary archive in video format, and he and his crew, basically between 20 and 25, they made their vision of the history. So maybe we could make also together with Kasper some kind of projection of that movie, and also we're going to send you a copy, or maybe to organize something in London. But this is the connection. Young generation felt something, made their own vision of that period. This is not our vision, this is not our story, this is not exactly musical movie, musical documentary. This is their experience, but they're feeling something about that music 20, 30 years later, and they building something new.
Imali smo nedavno, pre nego što si ti došao u Beogradu, premijeru jednog dokumentarnog filma koji su napravili studenti sa FDO-a u Beogradu. Dokumentarni film koji se bavi o underground sceni, muzičkoj sceni u Beogradu 90-ih. I to je u suštini projekat koji je pokrenut od Pavle Terzića, student FDU-a koji je bio je pasioniran i hteo je da napravi dokumentarac upravo o toj temi, a mi smo mu dali arhivu celu dokumentarnih filmova koje je on onda sklopio sam, i naravno da je najsmešnije nekako ili najzanimljiviji podatak celoj priči da Pavle nije ni sam bio rođen kad su se većina tih stvari dešavali, i naravno da je Giles unutra u samom dokumentarcu, tako da prosledit ćemo vam link neki ili da sam dokumentarac, naći ćemo ga i poslaćemo ga.
One more question about the scene. Do you still feel that London is the center of that vibe? Or you feel the vibe somewhere else, in Japan, in the States, in South Africa, India?
Da li se osjećate kao da je London i dalje centar neke muzičke scene, ili da li je to Japan ili neka druga zemlja?
You know, it's interesting. I think that definitely the UK is still, as Rob was saying, you know, there's no problem just be like the rivalry and the competition is important, and so the next generation is always going to want to do what the ones slightly older than them are doing, but differently. And you have to make sure that that's why the fashion and the music is always reinventing itself. Strangely enough, it's where the communities are strong, you know, like, and Chicago is interesting because you have International Anthem, which is a great record label based around a community center, based around musicians who find, so any scene, whether it's punk rock or the new avant-garde jazz world in Chicago, they are based around a venue, a community, and artists. And before you know it, 20 people can become 200,000 people. And so I think Chicago is very interesting. I think that what goes on in places like Los Angeles with groups like Odd Future and the internet and all these people who became, you know, that gave us Frank Ocean, it gave us Tyler the Creator, and they are connected to, previously to them, Sarah Creative Partners. There's a line of new generation. Australia is another very interesting place, Melbourne in particular, where people have kind of, you know, a community has grown out of an open, active, contemporary scene. But with the UK, and what I think is important to say here, is that in a way we're gatekeepers. And the gatekeeper has to make sure he keeps the gate open. And a lot of gatekeepers become gatekeepers and then they shut the gate because they want to control it. And that happens in jazz. I mean, jazz has historically never really allowed a new generation to come through. In a way that's important because you need the artists, the young generation, to understand the rules and the regulations. However, in the UK, what happened in the last 10 years is that this movement happened because that generation didn't feel that they had to ask the permission, that they are allowed to go and play at Ronnie Scott's, or that they have to be part of the London Jazz Festival. They were like, fuck that. We're going to create our own venue. We're going to find our own teachers. We're going to do our own flyers. We'll do our own events. And look at them now. They're flying the flag globally for jazz. And they're a bunch of kids who basically came out of London. So that's because the gatekeepers didn't shut the gate. They let them come through. And that's the really important thing to remember. For anything to grow, you have to make sure that, you know, you find those young people, and this is a very important thing. You know, with Worldwide FM, there were some young people, Erica McCoy, Hassie Big Bow, they were like 20 years old, and they were given prominent radio shows, and they're now interviewing Archie Shepp and interviewing, you know, Abashanti, or whoever, you know, and they're making the mistakes, but we're there to guide them. That's the important thing.
Okay, ja mislim da će London uvek imati svoju kreativnost i da će ono uvek da predstavlja neku vrstu centar za umetnost, ali za ovako ako gledamo globalno, jako se puno dešava u drugim zemljama, jako se puno dešava u punim gradovima, kao što je Chicago, kao u Melbourneu recimo, u različitim mestima imamo jako puno razvitka kreativnosti i muzičke kreativnosti i to je jako bitno pratiti takođe. Međutim, u Londonu se nekako podrazumeva da smo mi domari, da mi držimo ključ od kapije, ali ta odgovornost je velika i bitno je da mi onda ostavimo otvorenu kapiju za sve mlade ljude, za sve inovativne ljude koji žele da se bave ovim strukom i zbog toga mi trebamo takođe da ih podstičemo. Ipak su to svi ljudi koji su inače sami bili tinejdžeri u početku i nisu nikoga pitali za dozvolu, niti tražili pare, niti tražili nikakvo opravdanje za svoje akcije, nego su radili stalno su izlazili, nastupali, pravili projekte, pravili festivale i takva energija treba da se podstiče.
I would like to have one question for someone from audience. I'm very happy because my friend from Zurich, from Kashem, Zurich, Giles all knows about his project, and to tell us a couple of words how Zurich changed, how this Kashem changed scene in Zurich and this Lange Straße and what's everything happened there, because it's really, how I can say, priceless because he's here. And I would like you, and he has Yugoslavian roots. I can tell his parents moved from Yugoslavia to Switzerland, but he was born there. Yes.
Imamo privilegiju, u publici nam sedi Kashem iz Zuriha koji takođe radi svoje projekte, kojima bismo volili da možda pita nešto o tome. On inače ima isto korene iz Jugoslavije, njegovi roditelji su iz Jugoslavije, tako da...
All right. Yeah, I think I started with the project because there was a need of something else. Because Zurich was always into the electronic music scene. I was also running a club and doing parties in clubs. But as I saw when the scene was changing, as we know the world is changing, the whole music scene is changing since years. I've felt that I have to create a place where people come and listen music and not just not use it, but just consume it. As today, as Giles said, because of SoundCloud, Spotify, we have so much noise. There is so much opportunity for the people just to consume, but they don't really know what they want or what they are looking for. So it's very important that we, that Kasheme exists in Zurich. We have a young crowd. Our crowd is really from 18 till 65. It's a mixed crowd, and it changed a bit the city, of course. And I think why we are still existing since 10 years, it's because we just follow our path. So people come on Friday evening and ask for house music, but we play jazz. You can listen everywhere in town, house music, but not here. And I think, music, it's important. I think it's the most important thing for creating communities and bringing different people together. And I think, Kasper is a good example for Montenegro. I never have been to Budva. I came because of Kasper. I came to Montenegro because of Southern Soul, met different kind of peoples, and so wow, there is also here a scene. And I think the most important thing why we should bring Southern Soul back is mostly for the local scene, for the people from Montenegro, for the people from Kosovo, Albania, Serbia, that they have the chance to listen Giles. We don't need to go to London. And I think the whole last years, also UK, Brownswood, this jazz, London jazz was also experience. Why I did Kasheme, and we have to keep and open the gates also for the next generations.
Jako je bitno nama bilo da otvorimo naš prostor i da pravimo naš projekat u Zirihu, zato što to podstiče mladim ljudima interesovanje oko jazz muzike i zbog toga je takođe, ja mislim, jako bitno da Southern Soul da se ponovi i da nastavlja da se dešava u Crnoj Gori, zato što on služi kao tačka jedna za mlade ljude u regionu ovde iz Balkana, da mogu da dođu i da jednostavno doživljavaju nešto drugačije od onoga što im je inače norma u okruženju, drugačija muzika.
I have one question. Giles, do you still call your music or your world club music?
Giles, da li i dalje zoveš svoju muziku club muziku?
I'm getting to a stage now where I'm getting a little bit older. And the thing was, for me, my whole essence was combining club energy, radio discovery, and record label A&R. So for me, those three things had to exist together for me to be an authentic representative of whatever that was, which was coming out of club culture and exchanging. This is another thing that I didn't realize I was doing, but when I was going to all these different places around the world, one of the first DJs probably to go to Australia and Japan and America, Brazil, Argentina, I didn't realize that they wanted me to bring London, but I was then bringing their country back to the UK. So I suddenly became an ambassador, a sort of cultural ambassador, where I would then be able to sort of celebrate reggaeton or baile funk or, you know, some kind of new popcorn music from South Africa. So that was an interesting element of me. But for me to exist in a kind of way that I've always existed, I've basically done all of those things together, and then it comes out on the radio show. But now I'm getting a bit older, so I have to be more careful about how many gigs I do. But it's still very important, and I do feel that in essence, I'm a club DJ.
Sad kad sam stariji, vraćam se unazad i gledam svoj život i svoju karijeru i shvatam da sam zapravo ja spajao sve vreme DJing, radio emisije i record label, te 3 delatnosti, i u suštini tražio neku tačku zajedničku njihovu, ali takođe kroz celu svoju karijeru mislim da sam ja možda prvi jedan DJ koji je dospeo na takva daleke prostorije kao što je Australija, Brazil, Argentina, Južna Afrika, i koliko god da se čini svetu da sam ja dovodio njima britansku klubersku muziku, ja sam takođe uzimao od njih u saradnji sa njima i vraćao to nazad u Evropu, gde bi takođe podstakao neko opšte znanje o internacionalnoj muzici i šta se dešava svuda internacionalno.
Yeah, I have one question. I would like to go back to the radio stuff that you guys talked about like 10 minutes ago. Do you think that small radio stations like NTS, RINS, they are also important, especially for the like young DJs, young people, because they can like promote their stuff on those platforms?
Hoću da se vratim na radio emisije i samo da pitam, da li mislite da su male radio emisije isto toliko bitne za promociju muzike?
NTS is not really a small station anymore. It used to be.
It's more than BBC, I mean.
Yeah, it used to be. When it started off. I mean, I did a few shows on there. It started off being quite small, but it's massive. I mean, they put on amazing gigs. They've got some great presenters. Good mixture of old and new, younger generation presenters, but mostly younger generation. And it's, you know, when you meet younger people, you ask them what they listen to. You know, NTS is one of the first ones that pops into their heads. That's from my experience.
NTS nije toliko mala radio stanica, ali da, upoređujem sa BBC-om možda jeste manja. U svakom slučaju, kada pitaš bilo koga šta oni uglavnom slušaju, oni će reći NTS.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the thing is, it's pirate. This is all pirate radio. So, Boiler Room, NTS, the Lot Radio in New York, you know, these are community hubs which have grown, and they've, in many ways, they've even eclipsed the BBC and many other more well-known platforms, which is why I set up Worldwide FM, of course, which was kind of like a version for a more specific curation of this movement. So yeah, those stations are really important. The difficulty for them though is how do you monetize what it is that you're doing? So even a station like NTS or Worldwide FM, you need, if you don't want to advertise, because if you advertise, you're going to maybe affect your brand power. So how do you monetize? You have to have great investment and great partnerships. So the commercial side of what it is that you're creating becomes very important. So the initial energy of community and enthusiasm for the music, and suddenly after, it's like having a pet, you know. It's fun at the beginning, but you can't get rid of it. You have to make sure you kind of, you know. So this is the thing that we all struggle with. How can you make it monetize itself? Although it's getting a lot easier now. That's the good news. People are becoming more comfortable, more used to it. They understand it. They can navigate it, and it's a growing world, and it's absolutely essential for the growth of the music. And going back to the London thing, I think that NTS, Bellamy, Rinse, all these stations, they basically represent. My son was on Represent because they were aiming for under 18s. They were already looking to bring in the young kids below a certain age group to have their first experience. And in a way, online radio is amazing because it's pirate radio, but you're not going to get busted. We spent years getting busted, but now it's it's a nice, clean way to be able to have that experience.
Svi ti mali radio programi su u suštini piratski radio programi i To je zanimljivo, ali zanimljivo je zato što oni u suštini čak predstavljaju ozbiljnu konkurenciju sa velikim radioemisijama i čak su pojeli velike radioemisije, recimo Boiler Room, pa i sve te piratske radioemisije koje smo mi otvarali kad smo bili mladi. Ali zato recimo sam ja otvorio Worldwide FM ili započeo Worldwide FM zato što mi je bilo bitno da imam tačku jednu koja je jedinstvena gde je kurirana muzika za određeni ukus jedan. I šta je još bilo? To je bilo to u suštini, da.
Okay. Radi. Okay, ako radi. I have a question for Giles. You mentioned that you have 3 festivals, 3. So, what is the most important thing for one festival to grow, to develop, and also to connect with the community, but with local community in that city or maybe in that village, in that area? What is your experience?
Moje pitanje je, ti imaš 3 festivala ili praviš 3 festivala, dakle kako ti u suštini stvaraš neku individualnost prema tom mestu ili tom selu ili gde već održavaš festival, kakav je odnos između festivala i mesta?
So, the main festival I do now, the shall we say the complicated one, or the biggest one, is the one in the UK called We Out Here, because we're dealing with 15,000 people and hundreds of artists, and also it's kind of got a unique situation, which is that it is club culture and live music equal. So daytime is all live, nighttime is all clubs, and each bit is taken as seriously as the other bit. So in terms of growth, to ask the question, we just moved into a new site, new area, which has got the ability to grow. So that's already, like, geographically it's important. Putting on a festival from scratch is an unbelievable thing to do, because you have to create a village or a town and you have to make sure that you have different aspects for different people who want certain, they are spoiled, they want luxuries, they want hot water, they want all those things, they want good restaurants. So all of these things are quite, I don't do none of that, right? I don't organize that. That was organized. Thankfully, I have a very good team who do all of that stuff. But I think that it's a very exciting way. I mean, the other thing to say is that in the UK, the culture of festivals is developed much further than it is in other parts of Europe. So now there are gaps in the festival market where a festival like We Out Here can come along and be quite significant. People want something, because the tastes change, things become too predictable, and so people want a different experience. So as a festival, you have to make sure that your experience is unique, that the curation is going to be on point, and that you have all the luxuries and all the comfort that the people need. This festival this year, there is no Wi-Fi. So people who come with children and phones, they are being told, you cannot, this is going back 30 years, which I think will be quite an interesting experience for people in our new site. So we'll see how it goes, but yeah.
Da, We Out Here je festival koji radimo u Engleskoj i geografski on ima puno prostora za rast, on može da raste, ali u suštini praviti festival je kao praviti selo malo, kao da si gradonačelnik u suštini. Sad, hvala Bogu, pa ja imam veliki tim koji me dosta podržava, ja ne moram sam to sve da organizujem, ali ljudi su takođe postali malo razmaženi, očekuju puno od festivala i očekuju nekako da se svakome kurira za određene njihove potrebe ili želje, a to je jednostavno nemoguće. Međutim, nalazi, zato što se sve stalno menja, ukusi se stalno menjaju i trendovi se menjaju unutar muzike mi takođe nalazimo taj jaz neki u tržištu kako bismo mogli da stvaramo nove festivale koji znače mladim ljudima i svima koji žele nešto drugačije da čuju. Tako da velika je organizacija i veliki je postupak svakako.
Maybe a little bit more about that festival in France.
Da li možemo da he is asking to hear more about
because
the
it is
festival
probably
in France.
different. We know there is a huge scene in UK.
Yeah,
but
sure.
what about that small place? And are you trying to be better every year? How can you do that? For example, this year, and to be better next year.
Yeah.
Kako se napreduje u festivalima i da li možemo da čujemo malo o manjem festivalu u Setu u Francuskoj?
The French festival is kind of quite comfortable. It's like a nice restaurant and you don't really want to add new tables. It's kind of like it's happy being this boutique place that people are comfortable with. It's not, for me, it's not a festival that's going to grow. It's kind of like a small club. And you just need to make sure you get your tickets quick because it sells out. So I realized with that festival that we kind of reached a peak of what it was going to be, what we could do with it. We can do a few little changes here and there, but the one that's really more of a challenge is the one in the UK, because so far the one in the UK has been pretty much strictly for the UK audience. But now, because also Brexit meant that people didn't want to come to the UK the last 5 years so much. So now slowly there's this new way of seeing how that's going to change with a more international... Because normally I bring the Brits to Europe, but it'd be we're not getting that many foreign people coming to we out here yet, but we'll see how that changes. That'll be an interesting development, I think.
Festival u Francuskoj jeste ograničen geografski zapravo, on se održava u jednom restoranu koji ima jednostavno onoliko mesta koliko ima i to je to. Jako se brzo otkupe sve karte, tako da ako hoćete da idete možete brzo da kupite karte, ali u poređenju sa festivalom u Engleskoj, We Out Here, koji je jednostavno ima potencijal za rast i napravljen je tako da može da raste i da može da se proširi. Drugačije je infrastruktura festivala, drugačije je metodologija, da kažemo. I želja nam je zapravo da u buduće možemo da razvijemo koncept We Out Here festivala tako da privlači takođe međunarodnu publiku. Do sada je u suštini bila više za Britance, a želimo da to proširimo malo.
Just one thing I was going to say, the way things change slowly, there's always change in taste and mood and feel. And 2 years ago, if we'd have done a festival with no internet and no phone coverage, people would not come. But now, people are going to be really into that because the mood of the world has changed, I think, a little bit, where people actually want the freedom that you get there. So these are the kind of things that you have to be on top of, I think.
We Out Here inače prošle godine bio bez interneta, bez Wi-Fi dometa i to je nešto zanimljivo što isto tako prati neku vrstu trenda. Znači, mi smo to namerno uradili zato što mislimo da ljudima treba ta neka mentalna pauza i to treba isto gledati kako ljudi žele da iskuse festival i festivalsku atmosferu.
Just a question for the questionnaire, actually. This film that you were talking about by the youngsters made in Belgrade that Giles is in, I wanted to ask if there's someone that we all know who's responsible for bringing a lot of people here to Budva. His name's Željko Kaleta. He started a record label called Cosmic Sounds, and he was integral in bringing me here. This is why I'm here. That's why I played at Southern Soul Festival, etc. So hopefully he will be on there. That's a question for you. And something that Giles was talking about, gatekeepers, jazz music, etc. It's also important to remember how difficult it is for people from disadvantaged backgrounds to get into the music and to make it into the big time. So we're talking about people like Jazz Refreshed, a young black guy named Adam, came to see me in Honest John's Records 15 years ago with a flyer to say I'm starting a new night on Portobello Road. And he and his partner were the ones who started the whole new jazz scene and broke people like, I don't know, Nubaya, whoever, who people, small intimate venue, 100 people, but one of the most important things in the new jazz scene in the UK by two, young Adam rockers, two young kids, black kids from a disadvantaged background who really, really pushed not only male jazz musicians, but the most amazing female jazz musicians who've come through since then. So when we talk about culture, etc., it's also important to remember that some people have a bit of a disadvantage in making it in this music scene. And over to you.
Setim se priče različite kako mi zapravo stupamo u kontakt jednim sa drugim, recimo preko Željko Kerleta koji je dosta beogradskih DJ-a nalazio i sad ako se priča recimo o domarima unutar industrije, šta to znači, kakva je to odgovornost koju mi imamo da zapravo mladim ljudima i ljudima koji nemaju naše privilegije ili ljudi koji jednostavno su u lošim situacijama, u gorim ekonomskim ili fizičkim ili mentalnim problemima koji nemaju toliko prilike kao mi, da njima takođe stupimo kontakte i da njima otvaramo vrata.
Thank you for this ending point. Of course, Željko Kerleta is one of the most important people in the club scene of ex-Yugoslavia. Also, he brought many of you in ex-Yugoslavia, and also he brought lots of music from here to London. He's also in the movie. The movie is called Irreversible Time Fairy Tale. That time will never come back, but this is a fairy tale, and young kids feel that fairy tale. So I'm going to send it to you. Thank you very much for this conversation. This was relaxed. This was in the center of 2,500 years old city, and very soon it will start the rehearsal of city music. And I would like to thank to you as guests, our host and translator, our organizer, Kasper. We consider Kasper not as a club, we consider it club of course, but also cultural center. For us in ex-Yugoslavia, this was and this is and this will be cultural center. In the name of that's why for us your visit here is like a cultural event, not only music event but cultural event. This all that we recorded will be also shown to students of several universities in Cetinje and also Podgorica. And I would like to thank you also in the name of our candidacy, Budva Boka 2028 European Capital of Culture. Your visit here was like a refreshment for us, but also our statement, what kind of vision for Budva we would have if we win. If we're not winning, never mind, we're going to continue. Thank you very much.
Eto, ja bih htio svima vama da se zahvalim na prisustvu, nadam se da je bilo zanimljivo, nadam se da smo napravili bar mali doprinos, kako smo nazvali, repoziciji javnog muzičkog diskursa grada Budve, da smo malo podržali kulturu, da smo stepen iznad estrade koja vlada u Budvi i da ćemo nastaviti svi skupa, svim snagama i doći do titule Evropske prijestonice kulture. Hvala vam puno, naš program se nastavlja od 10 sati, Giles će imati svoj set u Kasperu i svi ste pozvani da čujete kako to zapravo zvuči i sve ovo što smo pričali do sada, kako to zvuči tamo. Hvala još jednom puno i vidimo se sutra od 7.